Ahoy and welcome to this narrowboat adventure. Today I'm coming to you with a Q&A video. So you guys have sent in some questions and I'm going to answer them. First of all, I'm going to start by looking on my Patreon, as I have a couple of questions there that are very interesting. Adam wants to know what my advice would be for someone wanting to set up a business on a narrowboat. So I don't run a narrowboat based business, so take all my advice with a pinch of salt. My advice would be, one, you need to look into what the requirements are going to be on your boat. So as far as I know, if you have a business where people from the public are coming on your boat has to pass a different kind of boat safety certificate, and you're going to need some public liability insurance. You're going to need a different kind of boat license. You're going to need a business license. And one of the business ideas you have here would be antique shop, coffee shop or event space. So if you wanted to talk to somebody about maybe starting a boat event space, I recommend talking to the Village Butty. All of those guys are really cool and really nice, so maybe just go to an event when it's not too busy, ask them about the business side of things. As far as I'm aware, when you have a boat business, if you are cruising, you have to give the CRT your movement in ahead of time for approval. And coffee shop, there's a really interesting book that I read about called The Floating Cafe, I think, or maybe it was The Narrowboat Cafe, something like that. And I thought it was really unrealistic because she had so many demands on her electricity and her water, and I think that is something to really take into account. You're going to have to get your boat really well set up with probably quite a lot of solar, or with a generator that's reasonably quiet so you can run it for power, because obviously when you have a business, you have to keep your milk and your perishables at particular temperatures to comply with the law. So I'd say those are the things, like logistically, that you need to sort out. And I'd also recommend going on Facebook. There's a couple of Facebook groups for floating traders and things like that. So I'm sure that would be a good place to meet other boaters. Look into when the floating markets be, get in touch with who's organising those, go to those. Be part of the community if you're going to do it, because that's really nice, and I think that you'll be more successful in running a business if you have other businesses around you that have done it longer than you that can help you out. David E wants to know when we'll see Squeak. Right now! She's sleeping, so I'm just going to turn the camera. Squeak, oh Squeak. Puss puss. And I'm moving on to the Facebook questions. Oh, there's lots of Facebook questions. Ben Faulkner wants to know, where did I get my windlass holder? I got my windlass holder on a website. If you search windlass holder on Google, I think the first one that comes up is where I got it, and I think it's called David On and On, the floating leather shop. Oh, and he says he wants advice on decorating his narrowboat because he's getting married. Congratulations. Congratulations, Ben, on your future wedding. I say look on Pinterest, talk to experts, be careful about what kind of wood you use, because obviously it's a different situation with a boat, but just go for it. Make it a really beautiful place to live and do it just as your style. My style, I think, is like boho hippie log cabin. Such a hipster sometimes, but I can't help it. I want to feel like I live in a log cabin, but I also love velvet and patterns and colours. Joel, who I interviewed the other day, the angry boater, wants to know if the boat has a boy's name, is it still a she? It depends. It's whoever the boat owner is gets to decide the gender, I think. I've seen boats with boy names. I'd probably call them he. There was one I saw that was called Mr. Frog, and I think that one was a boy. Fiona wants to know, she's just moved onto a boat, and she wants to know what would be advice I'd give to new boaters. What were the first few things I learnt? Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to watch your mechanic or any other person that comes to work on your boat. Watch them, ask questions, learn to do stuff for yourself. Try and take a deep breath when anything gets really stressful, and try and make your first question, how are we going to fix this? Don't panic. Enjoy yourself. Be part of the community is probably my biggest piece of advice. It's actually made such a humongous difference to us. A lot of things probably would have been a lot harder for us if it wasn't for the friends that we've made. So be part of the community, be interested in your boat, be interested in treating her well, and you'll be fine. Richard wants to know if boating is cost effective compared to a house. I don't know, is the short answer. There's a lot of things. The payments come in fits and spurts with boating. Sometimes it's very cheap, sometimes it's very expensive. And as I say, because of the friends that we've made, it's not been quite as expensive for us, I think. Whereas had we not made those friends, we probably would have ended up shelling out a lot more money at times. Even when DIYing, sometimes it's very expensive, like DIY blacking. It was very expensive to do, but actually would have been much more expensive had we paid someone else to do it. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was very expensive. And also it's time consuming, so there is definitely a cost and how much you value your time to be taken into account there as well. And also you mentioned in comparison to a house, and obviously that depends where you live and all sorts of things. David from Cruising the Cut, I think, has made some really good videos about the cost of living on a boat. I think I would probably maybe go into it with the general assumption that it's probably going to cost about the same as living on a house. If you budget the same amount that you would for living in a house, and I'm coming from this from the point of view of somebody who's only ever rented, if you budget that much and you end up with extras left over, then great. But you know what they say, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And John Hill, who you've seen in my other video when the engine broke down, he's the lovely mechanic that we often use, he has commented on that exact question, saying, living aboard is not cost effective compared to a house unless you're willing to get your hands dirty and do all or most of the upkeep yourself. And I completely agree. A lot of the jobs you can quite easily do yourself, but you just need to be willing to try. Jodie says, does the water ever flood above the canal walls? Now, I know that it has happened up in the north, but I'm not sure if that was rivers or canals. I suppose the idea is that with a canal, it shouldn't flood over the walls because it's man-made and it's controlled by the Canal and River Trust. It's certainly something I've never experienced, but I know obviously in rivers it does happen. Darren says, inverters, how to connect one up, including the main circuit, not just the batteries. I'm not sure this question makes sense, Darren. So you've asked me about inverters, how to connect one up, including the main circuit and not just the batteries. But, I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an electrician, I don't have an inverter, so I don't really know how to help you with this question. But I don't think it makes sense. I don't think you need an inverter if you're on a mains hookup. I think boats have two separate hookups, because we have plugs that we don't use because we never use our mains hookup. And I think that's a completely different electric system. And then we have the batteries in the engine, and that system is where you would use an inverter because the batteries are 12 volt and a mains system is 240 volts. And so to convert the electricity from 12 volt to 240, that's why you have the inverter. Whereas in the mains, it's already 240, so you don't need your inverter as part of your mains hookup. I think. I do apologise if I'm wrong. But yes, Darren, I'm going to say the best thing you could probably do is phone some people, ask them about it, maybe read the 12 volt Bible. I'm sure there's some great books. And maybe in the comments, if anybody knows about this, they can let Darren know. The best place for finding cheap boats, stolen or recovered auctions, etc. from Mark. So Mark, I don't think that there is really like stolen or recovered auctions, because generally I don't think that boats that are stolen are hard to reunite with their owner. I mean, I've seen boats that have been stolen on the Facebook groups for the boaters, and literally within about a day those boats will be found, because the system's very small compared to like the road or the world, and actually repainting a boat takes a really long time. So I think if a boat was stolen and repainted, it would be probably quite difficult to identify it as a stolen boat, and therefore the thief would get away with it. But maybe not. I don't know exactly. But if it wasn't repainted, I think it would be found and then reunited with its owner quite quickly. I don't know about boats that are brought up from the water, but I know obviously there is auctions on eBay, and some people do sell their boats on eBay. In fact, we found our boat because we went to see a boat, and then that boat sold, but then they said, do you want to see another boat? And I think that might have been on eBay. But there's also Apollo Duck. That's a really good website if you want to look at boats for sale. There's lots of other places, I'm sure, but those are the two places I would recommend. Apollo Duck has a huge selection, and whenever I fantasize about different boats, I go on Apollo Duck. Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing when buying a boat is that you look up other people's reviews about the person you're buying the boat from. For us, there were certainly places that we looked up and found that there were some really negative reviews about them, and that put us off entirely. I don't think you should shy away from buying a boat from an owner. I think that can actually be a really good way to do things. And please, 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 please get a survey on your boat. I can't stress this enough. If you're going to buy a boat, you need to get a survey. There's stuff going on below the waterline that you can't see, and you don't want to end up buying a colander. So please get a survey. It's very, very important not to get ripped off. And I know a few people who have bought boats and haven't had surveys, and then they found really, really, really big problems. If a boat is extremely cheap, there's probably a reason. So be very careful. And also remember that there's lots of fantastic forums, like Canal World is a really good forum, and there's a few forums on Facebook, so I'm sure you could ask some questions to. And don't be afraid to talk to boaters on the towpath and ask them your idiot questions, but maybe say, hello, what's your name? I'm so and so, I'm thinking about buying a boat, can I ask you some stupid questions? And then hopefully all of your questions can be answered. If you have any more questions, then leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them for you. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next Sunday. Bye!